Hi, I'm Eric Andrews, and I'm here to introduce you to Group 1's final project on empowering women in South Korea's workforce, mobilizing for equality. We will be discussing the traditional roles of Korean women, their current situation, and how they're being empowered for a better tomorrow. We will have several speakers break down their slides for a different section of this topic. Whether in a career or a more traditional role, Korean women help build their nation into the economic and cultural powerhouse we know and love. And today, I'd like to briefly explore Korean women within the workforce. We'll take a look at how Korean women were treated traditionally and how much has changed in the 21st century. As with many other societies, women were expected to fulfill one role, being a mother. However, this doesn't mean women didn't do any work outside of the household. Women were able to work in certain industries such as textile manufacturing or services. They were just expected to prioritize their family first. Becoming too invested in their careers would threaten the standards set by the Confucian scholars of Korea. This means many women had to balance two jobs and arguably more on their plate than their husbands. Historically, peasant Korean women had little to no rights. With the annex of Korea in 1910 by the Japanese, things only got worse. Korean women were forced into slave labor and made into prostitutes, the shock of which can still be felt to this day. As the country was freed from its captors and began to industrialize, women would slowly gain more roles. However, in the 1980s, this would reverse in women's favor. Labor shortages due to the rapidly growing economy would permit women to work alongside men in the labor force. Women's rights were kept to a bare minimum as they entered the workforce. Now, on top of being expected to run a family, they're also likely to have the same full-time job as a man. This is a phenomenon known as the double burden. With men mostly running the government, the rights of women are severely overlooked. Women, for the longest time, were given little to no help by their jobs to fulfill their family duties. This has led to the plummet in marriage and declining birth rate that is plaguing Korea to this day, and it's only getting worse every generation. Because of these societal expectations, women are less likely to be hired by these companies. Companies fear women employees might take too much time off or might become distracted, even if there's no evidence of this. These fears are deeply ingrained into the culture. As of 2021, only 12% of all managerial positions are held by women. As we roll into the 21st century, things are looking up for Korean women. In 2013, the first female president of Korea, Park Geun-hye, was elected. As of 2023, 18% of the National Assembly, essentially the Congress of Korea, are women, and the number rises nearly every year. Women, thanks to the lack of mandatory military service, start their careers earlier than their male counterparts. This can be seen with higher college graduation numbers for Korean women when compared to Korean men. Lastly, corporations and the media are doing their parts to make sure women feel empowered to enter these positions and make sure there's a spot for them. Korea is one of the oldest remaining cultures on the planet. Despite being conquered multiple times, it has endured all the way to the 21st century. Because of this, they can be pretty hesitant to change. But Koreans know that stagnation can be dangerous for survival. With the adaptation to a modern economy, the living conditions and rights of women have also increased dramatically. They are no longer expected to just create families, but now can participate more directly in the nation's future and even lead it going forward. Thank you. And now, on to the next speaker.
Hello, everyone. My name's Roscoe, and representing the second part of this project. I will say that my pronunciations are not perfect, so I'm sorry about that. Please don't take it personally. So this is flip-flopping. Korea's national government's actions. They've tried to level the playing field and however, are fighting conservative culture, both financially and, well, culturally, societally. So, the history of the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family was founded on March 19th, 2010, and it was preceded by a long list of different institutes, but almost since the country's founding in 1948 with the creation of the Ministry of Social Issues, have women's issues and women's rights been taken seriously by the federal government. So that it was taken over by health, and then finally a presidential commission was assembled on women's affairs so that both issues of health and women's rights and family rights can be kept separate. The main goal is that this is the biggest public authority in Korea on discrimination, societal advancement, protection, and prevention of violence, child and family welfare. So everything from promoting women in the workforce, promoting women in society, making sure that men and women have equal rights, protection against survivors of rape or other violence, prevention of said violence, and things like human trafficking and prostitution, and the other family planning needs. So it has actually been fairly successful in its campaigns in bringing South Korea into the modern democratized world. However, each and every step has been met with vicious resistance that has made them the target of many campaigns to actually get rid of the ministry, which to me is very sad. But if anything, it's a testament to the persistence of women and modern society as a whole. And as you can see, the symbol there in the corner, it's an executive branch ministry, so it's under the president of Korea. So some of the biggest initiatives have actually been undertaken by the courts. This is a very different stance than countries like the United States, where the court system, the judicial system, has actually been very hostile towards expanding or even contracting rights that the public has enjoyed for decades sometimes. But particularly, some of the major advances has been the Supreme Court ending the practice of Hoju, which has meant that men are the heads of households. They own all the property and control the rights of other people. It's obviously not the same, but it can be comparable to how women in some Middle Eastern countries are controlling the actions that they can take and what courses they have or recourses if they are ever injured from violence in that family. This completely changed family dynamics on paper, but as we'll see later on, this didn't change it in reality. Some other advances was now there's both maternity and paternity leave in South Korea, with more time in maternity leave and more benefits than paternity leave. Um, and it's not just been the courts, but there's also been the legislature, which has passed different laws, such as it started, I believe, 4 to 5 years ago by including a child credit, essentially a subsidy. So with every child that you had, you'd be paid a certain amount per month until elementary school. And recently that was doubled or even tripled within the last year as South Korea's birth rate continues to decline. Um, there's also been reforms to protect women from abuse, like domestic abuse and rape. Abortion was made legal actually in 2021 on January 1st. And it has decriminalized adultery. So women who were previously prosecuted if they were prostitutes or whatever, that's no longer the case. And as well, there has been some minor steps to try to curb the financial not financial extreme, the corporate extremism that has been rampant in South Korea, such as limiting the number of hours to a maximum of 52 hours of labor per week, 40 standard and 12 overtime hours. So, speaking of these forces, this is the primary problem in South Korea is the entire way the economy is structured. Essentially, there is an extreme corporate culture in which you're expected to work very long hours. South Koreans work the highest amount of hours compared to any other developed country in the world. Um, it is hyper competitive. It is not uncommon to see even baristas or cashiers requiring college degrees to be accepted in those positions. There's a lot of corporate espionage, there's a lot of corruption between the government and business. There's a strict corporate hierarchy. If your boss says something, you have to go. If there's gonna be a work dinner that night, well, guess what? You're not going home. You're having dinner, and then when you finally go home, you go to bed, and then you wake up and you go to work again the next morning. Um, Part of that is the extreme cost of living crisis, which we'll talk about in just a second. But as I wrote in my notes, there is no other place that's closer to cyberpunk dystopia than South Korea and their hypercapitalism, and this can be seen in the chaebols or the breadwinners in Korean of South Korea. They're essentially four companies with the highest market capitalization, and they're basically above the law. They started out during the massive government reforms in the 1980s and 90s, which sought to make Korea a fierce economic competitor, a revolution financially, in order to leap ahead, right? Once the dictatorship as well was ended. And they went to these four companies, the government, and said, we'll give you any resources that you need, and you'll be able to act in almost any way as long as you become competitive on the world stage. Well, now they're suffering from that success, essentially. So, what all this has created a society where the cost of living is extremely high. Already, it's a struggle to find affordable housing, and the problem is due to the over-centralization in Seoul. Seoul is obviously the financial and political capital of the nation, and that's unfortunately where the best universities, the best schools, and all the best companies are located. So if you're anyone, you're gonna want to move to Seoul. Because everything is in Seoul, that area is extremely dense and extremely expensive. So you're gonna need to rely on loans or family financial help or from friends, whatever you can get a hands on to even buy a house. And then if you don't even have money to buy a house or buy an apartment, and you don't have time for yourself because of the extreme work culture, how are you even going to raise children? After all, aside from the upfront cost, many children after school would be going to academies up to 10 p.m. at night. And forget about summer. Summer vacation is studying at another academy just so they can get perfect scores in school to get into a prestigious university, to get into a prestigious company. So this has caused and the entire organic parts of society, people fit the demands of the corporate culture. And obviously this has its own impact as well. And for women, to have time also to have relationships is there's just no time or money to invest in that. However, as I said, there has been some changes to company culture, such as the minimum or maximum allowable work hours, which has helped. But there are larger societal issues that really have not changed, even as the laws have changed. Essentially, in South Korea, there's an extreme patriarchy wherein the men are the head of the family or the head of the companies, and women are expected to be subservient. They're expected to take care of all the affairs of the house, of raising children, and the men do almost nothing apart from their official work, of course. Um, and there's a lot of ways that women are controlled and are expected to be, essentially. Like, for example, there's an extreme pressure to eat healthy or look beautiful all the time, always wear makeup. It's almost as if women are just complete objects in the society and aren't allowed to be themselves. And be part of that is because it's very traditional society. If you're not married, it's really shunned to have kids, which is unfortunately how many countries, about 30 to 40% of other developed countries, women have kids out of wedlock or without a stable partner. And unfortunately, this reduces the birth rate. And then you don't want to alienate your family if you have a child outside of a marriage, because again, they won't want to help you. And with companies, they will specifically ask you if you're woman, oh, if you're this certain age, are you in a relationship? Are you married? Do you have kids? Things which would be considered discriminatory or that you're legally not allowed to reply in other countries, like in the United States, you could say, I'm not comfortable answering these questions. there's no such even vocabulary for that in South Korea. So it becomes a very untenable situation, essentially. And because of all this extreme pressure, and as I said, financially and growing up as a kid, you're never going to even have a life because you're going to be studying all the time, has led to very high rates of depression and suicide in South Korea. And even many women saying that they are just not going to bring that pain to future generations and so aren't going to have kids. This also extends, unfortunately, to violence against women because even though rape is a crime and sexual assault and assault in general are heavily penalized, they're very legal. Um, to actually for women to actually report it and have their cases taken seriously, is very difficult. And even if it does, people won't believe that. People will say it's not real, and they feel like they can't really do anything. Um, the feminist movement, however, really took off after the Me Too movement had its global reach, where it led to many powerful politicians and business leaders going down for their inappropriate relations or horrendous acts against women. This empowered many women around the country, but because of all the aforementioned conditions, it evolved into something much more extreme, even compared to Western countries, including the 4B movement or Four No's in Korean, which is basically a female uprising where women are just refusing categorically to have sex, children, date, or marry with men at all. This has led to the basic demographic collapse of South Korea. What I mean is that the fertility rate or the ratio of how many kids a couple has to have in order to sustain population is 2.1 children per couple. However, in South Korea is the lowest in the world, and they even beat their own record twice at only 0.8 children per couple, meaning that in a couple of decades' time, half of the Korean population will die off and will continue to decline. And despite the government taking financial steps to have more children to be able to support families, as we see, this has almost no effect on the extremely rigid culture. And this will come into the flip-flopping that I mentioned at the beginning with the rise of this political counter-revolution, the reactionaries to this. The main reaction from men has been that they are the victim. They claim that now they can't be men because the way that they act, they'll get reported for sexual harassment or whatever will you. Um, and they feel very threatened by this movement, evidently, and have said that no, like women, leftists, feminists are the problem. It's causing all this societal upset. This leads to the election of President Yol, which President Yo was the first conservative to win the presidency in a generation. He was relative political newcomer. He was only the attorney general during Moon Jae-in's presidency, his predecessor. And he did campaign on strong anti-feminism. He has basically gone back on everything that the previous government did, such as reform in the jobs. He now wants to increase the maximum work hours back to 69 hours, or even more than was previously allowed. He's also almost all diplomatic ties with North Korea and been very aggressive towards the regime. And finally, he's declared a war on woke or on feminism. Again, in very similar terms here in America, again, saying that women are the problem. For example, making the punishment for false rape or false charges against men accused of these crimes to be punishable, sometimes even worse than the crimes of abuse itself. Um, Not only that, he has threatened to and even put into motion plans to eliminate the Ministry of Gender Equality and Families because of his political views. Now, as to what is to come, I can't really say for sure. But what I will say is the feminist movement has been through a lot. It's been through essentially a society that refuses to budge to anything that's human, essentially. It's a very almost inhuman society and the way it treats its women and the way it treats its general population who aren't economically productive for the mega corporations who run the country. So there's a sense of hope that there will be some resilience. but hopefully things continue in a positive direction and the country can recover from this reversal of the progress that has been made. So thank you so much, and pass it to the next presenter.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to whoever reading this. My name is McChrishna, and I'll be digging into the South Korean workforce and explaining the challenges faced by South Korean women. Over the years, the population in South Korea has expanded. With this, women are widespread across the country working the same jobs as men, specifically in the manufacturing industry. During the 1970s and 1990s, the government's main focus was just men and their participation in the production industry. As the employment in South Korea increased, women were working the same jobs as men, and the government were able to view the perceptions of women in the workplace. To create a change as a government, South Korea formed gender equality based laws, and as you can see here in the corners, Korea's first female president, which is which proves that women are able to work the same jobs as men. In the South Korean workforce, women experience an outstanding difference in pay compared to men. Specifically, there's a 35% wage gap between the two genders. However, the South Korean government has taken steps to address this problem and promote gender equality. In the year 2001, South Korea established the Ministry of Equality, which is dedicated to supporting gender equality and women's rights organizations. This ministry plays a vital role in advocating the gender equality initiatives and policies across the country. Moreover, the Framework Act on Gender Equality in South Korea includes Article Number 5, which explains that all citizens have the right to receive gender equal treatment. And this is a legal framework that reinforces the commitment to promoting equal opportunities and fair treatment for both genders. Furthermore, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, as you see here, is OECD, has been actively involved in enhancing gender equality in South Korea since the year 2012. The OECD's project has helped South Korean government recognize the significance of gender equality and its positive impact on society. Despite these efforts, it is essential to continue raising awareness and advocating the policies that bridge the gender pay gap and foster a more inclusive and equitable workforce for women in South Korea and all over the world. By promoting gender equality, societies can benefit from the full potential of all individuals, regardless of the gender. Now, on this slide, I want to share a Korean success story. And this is 50-year-old Shin Han Jung. She was a school administrator, and she basically used the gender equality ministry to negotiate a wage increase. Despite all the gender equality troubles, a special woman here, Shin Han-jun, as I explained, she was a school administrator and she was expected to work on Saturdays. However, this became a hassle for her since she had nowhere to leave her daughter. In the story, she explains it was hard to lug a job around while having no one to watch her daughter since the school wasn't open for kids on Saturdays. She requested to speak to the gender equality minister, Kim Hun-suk. Although they didn't accept her interview, she still fought for a change. Her issue was that she had to work terrible paying jobs just to meet the needs of her child, while men, on the other hand, lived totally opposite lives. Her goal was to change the pay gap between men and women fairly, and in the year 2000, she was able to break a 10-year pay freeze and finally negotiate increasing pay wages for women. This shows change is possible, especially as a woman. It may be harder for us to do things, but if we fight for what we want, it's possible to get it. Thank you for listening to my part, and I hope you learned something new.
Hello, my name is Juan Rebellon, and I will be touching up on the subjects of the importance of education and training and empowering women in the workforce. I will also speak on the programs that have taken initiative in providing skills development and training for the women of South Korea. The importance of education and training and empowering women in the workforce in South Korea cannot be overstated. Historically, South Korea has been a predominantly patriarchal society with traditional gender roles emphasizing women's roles as caregivers and homemakers. However, over the past few decades, the country has made significant progress in recognizing the value of women's participation in the workforce and has been working towards gender equality. Education equips women with the necessary knowledge, skills, and qualifications required to succeed in the modern job market. With better education and training, women can access higher paying and more rewarding positions, increasing their economic independence and social standing. It is important to acknowledge some of the programs that have decided to attack head on and take initiative into developing skills and training for women in the workforce in Korea. One program that has stood out to me is Korean Women's Development Institute. This organization focuses on making sure they fight for gender equality in the workforce and also emphasizes on the importance of how proper training can lead more women into the workforce in South Korea. Sonia Choi is the first female president of South Korea's Inha University. She states that the secret to success is a lifetime of diligence and hard work. Many women like Sonia have taken advantage that women are breaking barriers by the day to make sure that the workforce stays equal and women have the same right to work and earn their own money just like men do.
Hello, my name is Christine de la Cruz, and I will be discussing the role of corporations in women's employment. I will be showing issues women face in the workplace, how these issues may have changed, and how corporations have taken steps to promote women's participation in the workforce. Thanks to Madame Park Geun-hye's admission into office in 2013, there has been a major push for change in the workforce. As the first female president, she pushed towards creating an environment where a woman's career development doesn't face cultural or social obstacles. As a result, corporations are encouraged to hire more women than they have before and have taken steps to make sure they can stay in the workforce as well. Before we delve into the positives, we have to address the problems that prevent women from entering or returning to the workforce. South Korean women do not look for jobs using the same method men do. Although women tend to have a head start in job searching due to men's mandatory military service, men still get advantages compared to women. Men make social connections and networks during the military service that allow them to find a job more easily once they finish their service. Women enter the workforce in their 20s but tend to leave in their 30s because of marriage or childbirth. They don't usually re enter the workforce until their 40s if they choose to do so. This is a vast difference from men who join the workforce in their 20s and usually don't leave until their 60s. This statistic unfortunately leads to conservative corporations or managers not hiring women because they believe they won't stay. Not only are there obstacles for women to enter or return to the workforce, there are problems that are affecting women's employment within corporations. The WEF Global Gender Gap Report details the amount of women in the workforce compared to men. Here, we have a data table pulled from the Gender Gap Report that shows the percentage of female employees in the listed South Korean companies in the year 2021. While all the companies gave data on female employees, only a few companies provided the numbers of female managers and executives working in their company. Looking at the low percentages of managers and female executives leads to the conclusion that there aren't many women promoted to higher positions. Which brings us to the fact that there's the unfortunate issue that women attempting to further their careers can't because of the lack of promotions offered to them. A study done between a couple hotels in South Korea finds that 63.8% of employees feel that men are more successful than women in getting a promotion. I will now be focusing on the positive role corporations have had when it comes to promoting women's employment. Corporations in South Korea already provide 90 or 120-day maternity leave for women in the workforce, which can be accepted before or after childbirth. Women are given 120 days if they are having two or more children in their pregnancy. 45 days of leave can be granted after childbirth if the mother chooses to request it. Employers can't cut wages for women going on maternity leave, and they can't fire women who go on maternity leave. They also can't fire them 30 days after their return from maternity leave either. However, maternity leave only plays a small part in what promotes women's participation in the workforce. South Korean companies offer what is called work family balance assistance for parents with a child 8 years or younger. The employer is not allowed to decline when the assistance is requested by an employee who is eligible to receive it. The assistance allows a parent to request a leave of absence of up to 1 year, and they can request a reduction in work hours. Employers aren't allowed to fire or take measures against employees who request or receive this assistance. Out of 500 South Korean companies, there were 10 that had great scores in gender equality. Their great score was a result of their initiatives in hiring and promoting women more often, lowering pay gaps, promoting programs to help female employees, and providing child care and childbirth welfare benefits. Here I'll be listing what each company has achieved with their initiatives. At Naver, women work at the company longer than men. In a more Pacific, 67% of workers are women, and 32.7% of executives are women as well. Younggun reports 75% of employees are women, and women make up about 38.5% of executives. Kakao reports that women continue to work at the company just as long as men do. 40% of their executives are female. Hanmi Pharmaceutical pays their female employees an average annual salary of 59 million won, the same amount that 80.8% of male employees receive. Hansaya Fashion Worldwide has good scores for having many women at executive and senior management positions. CJCGV pays their female employees the same average annual salary as 79.2% of their male employees. LF has more female executives than male executives. Citibank has high ratios of women in executive positions. 59% of Standard Chartered Bank's employees are women. So, these 10 companies have shown it is possible for corporations to take the steps to help women succeed in the workforce. Once again, let's touch on what's made these companies so successful with gender equality. They provide women with welfare benefits for childbirth and childcare. They organize events and mentorship programs to help women further their careers. They decrease the pay gaps between the women and men at their company. They hire women more often than other companies do, and they offer their female employees promotions instead of only offering them to men. There's still a ways to go, as women still struggle with keeping their careers due to childcare. Women are still expected to focus on the role more than men, and with childcare services being limited, it becomes more difficult for women. However, there is definitely change happening, as we've seen what some companies have done to promote women's employment. Thank you for following my presentation. I will now let the next presenter take the lead.
Morning or good afternoon, Professor. My name is Rachel Isidore, and for my part of my presentation with you, I would like to discuss a topic of great significance: the importance of changing mindset and addressing cultural barriers to women's workforce participation. So, in my part of my presentation, I would like to dive into the impact of awareness campaign, media representation, and the initiative that challenge the gender stereotypes. Additionally, I would like to explore with you some of the inspiring stories of women who have defined societal expectation and achieved remarkable success in their careers. Overall, by examining all these aspects, I hope that I can shed a light on transformative power of breaking barriers and fostering gender equality. So let's us begin. Let's start by looking at some statistics. According to a report by the World Economic Forum, South Korea ranks 102nd out of 153 countries in terms of gender equality. When it comes to women's labor force participation specifically, South Korea lags behind other development nations. In 2020-21, only 57% of working age Korean women were employed compared to 81% of men. These statistics has considerably gap between men and women labor force participation in South Korea, with men being significantly more likely to be employed compared to women. So, why the disparity? One major factor is the presence of cultural barriers. South Korea has deeply ingrained traditional mindset that place a heavy emphasis on gender roles and expectation. The Confucian values that have influenced Korean society for centuries now often prioritize the role of women as wives and mothers, limiting their opportunities for professional development. So, let's look at some evidence from a research study conducted by the Korea Development Institute. The study found that 40% of employers in South Korea believe that women should be responsible for household chores and childcare regardless of their professional aspiration. These deeply entrenched beliefs make it difficult for women to balance their work and family responsibilities. Another significant barrier is workplace discrimination. South Korean women often face discrimination in hiring and promotion processes, as well as lower wage compared to their male counterparts. The gender gap pay in South Korea stands at around 32%, which is one of the highest among the OECD countries. It is critical to change mindsets and address these cultural barriers in order to promote women's workforce participation. Increasing the number of women in the workforce not only benefits individual women, but also has a positive effect on the overall economy. A report by McKinsey Global Institute estimates that the closing gender gap in South Korea could boost the country's GDP by 12% by the year of 2025. Now let's discuss some possible solution. Education and awareness campaign plays a vital role in challenging transitional gender roles and promoting gender equality. By educating young girls and boys about equal opportunities and challenging gender stereotypes, we can lay the foundation for a more inclusive society. Additionally, government initiative can help create a supportive environment for women in the workforce. For instance, South Korea has implemented policies such as expanding affordable childcare services, providing parental leave options for both mothers and fathers, and introducing quotas for female representation on corporate boards. Changing mindsets and addressing cultural barriers are critical steps towards improving women's workforce participation in South Korea. By challenging traditional gender norms, combating workplace discrimination, and implementing supportive policies, we can create a more inclusive and prosperous society for all. Now, let us dive into the topic of awareness campaign, media representation, an initiative that challenges gender stereotypes in South Korea. Awareness campaign plays a critical role in challenging gender stereotypes. In South Korea, been a specific significant rise in public awareness regarding gender equality in recent years. One piece of evidence to back this up is the Korean government launch of the Equal Employment Opportunity Act in the year 2017 to promote gender equality in the workplace. Another piece of evidence is the survey conducted by Korea Women's Development Institute in the year 2022, relating that 80% of the respondents in this study expressed their support for gender equality and challenging traditional gender roles. Media representation is another essential aspect of challenging gender stereotypes. South Korea has witnessed notable change in this regard. For instance, the K-dramas and films that have started featuring strong female characters who defy traditional gender norms, such as Crash Landing on You and the Incheon class. Another piece of evidence that backs up media representation in Korea is the rise of influential female K-pop idols like Blackpink and Twice, who empower women through their music and stage performance. Alongside awareness campaign and media representation, numerous initiatives have emerged to actively challenge gender stereotypes in South Korea. For instance, the He for She campaign initiated by the United Nations has gained attraction in South Korea, encouraging men to actively support gender equality. Another piece of evidence to this is non governmental organizations like the Korean Women Association United and Korea's Women Hotline that have been instrumentally in advocating for women's rights and combating gender stereotypes. The combined efforts of awareness campaign, media representation, and finally the initiative of challenging gender stereotypes have yielded encouraging results. One example of this is a study conducted by the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family in the year 2021 reported a decrease in gender-based violence incidents in South Korea, and these indications are still processing till now. Another piece of example to this is the increasing participation of women in traditional male-dominated fields such as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which all of these reflects a shift in societal participation and expectation. The ongoing awareness campaign involving media representation and active initiative in South Korea demonstrates a commitment to challenging gender stereotypes. However, there's still some work that needs to be done. Let me share with you some of the motivational stories of South Korean women who push cultural norms and achieve professional success. I will share some inspiring stories of women who overcome obstacles and made important contribution to their industry with you. So let's start. Let's begin with the story of Lee So-young, who is the inspiring South Korean scientist and astronaut who achieved the remarkable feature of being the first South Korean citizen in space. She earned her bachelor's and master's degree in mechanical engineering before being selected as one of the two finalists from a pool of 36,000 applicants to train in Russia for a flight to the International Space Station, also known as ISS. Although initially a backup, she eventually embarked on her space journey on April 8, 2008, alongside with her two astronauts who are Russians. During her 9-day stay at the ISS, Yi conducted experience and medical tests. However, upon re-entry, the spacecraft encountered difficulties, resulting in a rough landing and back injuries for Yi. Despite these setbacks, her mission was considered a success, and Yi resigned from South Korea's space program in the year of 2014, leaving behind an inspiring legacy as a trailblazer for women in the field of space exploration. Moving on to the story of Yeon May Ray, who is an inspiring woman in South Korea as well. However, she has a most significant impact in the music industry. As a talented rapper, singer, and songwriter, she has overcome numerous challenges and has become a role model for many aspiring female artists. Her stories have influenced other females by breaking barriers and defying societal expectation. Her fears and her unapologetic approach to her craft has challenged traditional gender norms, empowering women to pursue their dreams and expressing themselves authentically. Her success has shown that women can thrive in male dominant industries and has encouraged countless young girls and women to embrace their talents, preserve their adversity, and make their mark in their chosen field. Her stories serve as a testament to the power of determination and serve as an inspiration to all who dare to define societal limitation. Now let's hop into the past and look into Queen Sadok's story, who is an inspiring figure in the South Korean history. She is known for her exponential leadership and the positive impact she had on society. As the first reigning queen of the Slime Kingdom, Queen Sadok shattered gender barriers and proved that women could rule with wisdom and strength. Her reign, which lasted around the year 632 to 647, was marked by remarkable achievements and advancement in various fields. This include arts, culture, and diplomacy. Her story has a profound influence on females in South Korea and beyond, as she served as a role model for leadership, resilience, and breaking societal norms. Her legacy has inspired generations of women to strive for excellence, pursue for ambition, and make meaningful contribution to communities and the world. Queen Sadok reign stands as a testament to the capabilities and potentials of women, encouraging females to embrace their power and create a positive change in their own lives and society as a whole. So, let us remember that the journey towards gender equality is not solely about policy changes or legal reforms. It is a profound transformation of mindset and the breaking down of cultural barriers. As I conclude today, let us be inspired by the stories of women in South Korea who has defied societal expectation, shattered glass ceiling, and succeed in their career. Together, through awareness campaign, media representation, and initiative challenging gender stereotypes, we can continue to pave the way for a future where every woman can thrive and contribute their talents, uncubed by cultural limitation. As we uplift one another, we can create a society where everyone potentially is realized and true equally flourish. Thank you. Now let me hand over the floor to our next presenter, Eric, who will be wrapping up our presentation.
Thank you for watching Group 1's final project on empowering women in South Korea's workforce, mobilizing for equality. Through our several presenters, we showed the traditional roles of Korean women, their current situation, and how they're being empowered for a better tomorrow. We hope you enjoyed your time. Thank you.